This
Uh,
conference will now be recorded.
we have a program for you today, which we titled "ReLeaf Syracuse and the Urban Forest Master Plan" with Stephen Harris, the City of Syracuse Arborist. I will tell you a little bit more about Steve when I turn it over to him. Before I ask everyone to just state their name and if they're with an organization that they would like to mention, we would appreciate knowing that. I will give you a chance in a minute, but before I do that, let me just make a couple of quick announcements that um, I saw in my inbox that I thought were important, that if you haven't seen them, that maybe you would want to take notice of. Um, and so one of those was from Agree, and on next Thursday, the 15th, they're going to have a workshop on utility debt relief and energy affordability events, things that people, homeowners, probably even business owners, small business owners can take advantage of and sign up for to get some relief from their utility bills, talking about such things as home energy assistance program, um, Empower, which is New York State's program for better insulation, energy efficiency, et cetera, weatherization assistance, and the energy affordability program. So that's December 15th from Agree. From the Urban Jobs Task Force, they're looking for people to sign a petition to encourage the governor to sign the PSI Act, which is relative to highway projects as they impact schools. In fact, if you're going to be in New York City this weekend, tomorrow, there's a rally that they're going to hold, but that might be something you want to sign the petition on. And finally, I saw something from what was this? What's this other organization? Urban Jobs, uh, Agree. Oh yes, and um, Beyond Plastics. They're asking for organizations to sign on, urging the New York State Legislature to avoid approving any legislation that deals with the so-called topic of advanced recycling, believing that that's not really a good option. So just a couple of notices I wanted to make sure people are aware about. Look, you might have seen them in your inbox, and if you need more information about that, we can get it in the chat for you or email it to you later. So, um, maybe if you need that information, put it in the chat. So, let's just do a quick. We've got a lot of people here, so let's go quickly around the room and who's in here. Now, the one thing that I need to do is probably call on on people to do that. So let me see if I can kind of coordinate that. So I see Bill is here, Bill Chadwick.
Yes, thank you, John. Retired from Carrier for a couple years, living out in the country by Marcellus, in a nicely wooded, shaded, unair conditioned house that has the benefit of the tree canopy. And I'm actively involved at Baltimore Woods Nature Center and the Central New York Land Trust Pleasant Valley Preserve. So excited to hear about trees.
Right. Howie's here.
Yeah. Hi, Howie Hollander, like Bill, retired, but from Lockheed Martin, representing the Technology Alliance of Central New York, and hopefully some of the people on this call because they got my sharing of the announcement for this meeting.
Thanks, Howie. Dick Smartin.
Hi, everybody. Professor Emeritus at SUNY ESF and former chair of the board for Central New York Land Trust.
Peter? Peter
Hi,
McCarthy.
Peter McCarthy with Illinois Solidarity. I live across the street from Sherman Park.
Thank you. Jeffrey Gorney?
I'm a freelance writer, I live in Hawley Green, and I would call myself an urban pioneer. I'm on the board at Northeast Hawley Development Association and film curator at Art Rage Gallery.
Thank you for being here. Nice to meet you. Katarina Searing?
Hello, everyone. Katrina Searing. I work at SUNY ESF, and I am the immediate past president of the board of Baltimore Woods. And 3 young children. We live in the city, and we love trees.
Thanks for being here today. Marjorie?
Hi, I'm from Tacony and from Syracuse University, electrical engineering and computer science. And I like trees, and I live next to the woods that's about to become a Hannaford's grocery store in Fayetteville.
Thank you for being here. Bob Haley?
Thank you, Bob Haley, an architect and semi-retired. It's the only thing I can say. Am on the Landmark Preservation Board for the City of Syracuse, working with the Mayor's Cooperative and planning with Dover Cole Urban Designers to complement the I-81 project. Definitely support Greening USA at every break. I'm on the focus board of Greater Syracuse. I'd like to simply say, if I missed you, John, thank you for your announcements. Next Friday, Focus Forum will have County Executive Ryan on talking about the Micron impact. And one of the prime things we all should be saying to him is make it a sustainable future for all aspects of planning impacted by Micron. Thank you for your sessions.
But I'm glad that Focus is doing that. Our board talked about that recently, about trying to get something going. Scott is here.
I was just unmuting. Hi, I'm Scott Kushner. I'm a retired library director in the Onondaga County Public Library System. I'm on the board of Greening USA, so I obviously support what they're doing. And I have always been a big hiker, backpacker, and so I love the woods and trees and anything having to do with that. And I also I will be participating in the Focus Forum on Friday. So that's
Thank
it.
you. Thank you. And Jim P. from, is that Klepper, Hahn & Hyatt?
That's correct. So I'm Jim Palumbo with Klepper, Hahn & Hyatt, and I'm a landscape architect here locally in the area. And it was interesting to hear Micron. I also serve on the Town of Clay Planning Board, so I'm excited for that project and see what we can do in the way of these kind of efforts. So.
All right, thank you. And Jessica from Focus.
Hi, I'm Jessica Lisi. I'm the Director of Marketing and Communications for Focus Greater Syracuse. And of course, Bob lovingly stole my announcement about our Focus Forum next week with Micron in the Community, it's called, with the county exec. So go to our website, focussyracuse.org, to sign up if you're interested. And I'm very interested to see what Greening USA has in regards to trees and the sustainable future of our community. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to switch how I'm recognizing people because I'm not seeing everybody. I'm just going to go from the list. And I see that Carol is that Carol Biesmeyer that's here?
Hello, everybody. Carol Biesmeyer. I'm a member of Greening USA. I am also the vice president for the Wild Ones chapter, Habitat Gardening in Central New York. And I'm also on the board of trustees of the Zen Center of Syracuse that's down in the valley. And our property borders the creek, and we're very concerned about the trees there. So
thank you,
great
Carol.
to be here.
Caroline?
Oops, sorry, I was on mute. Hi, I'm Caroline Rithog. I'm actually in Saratoga Springs. Not even sure where I picked up information about your session, but I work with Sustainable Saratoga's urban forestry project, and we're just really interested in how other cities and other organizations work together and plan for managing their urban forest.
Oh, well, thanks for being with us. We love having links to the rest of the state. So thanks for being here. Dave Coburn.
Hi, David Coburn. I'm listening on behalf of the Onondaga County Soil and Water Conservation District.
Thanks, Dave. Diana.
Hi, I'm Diana Elliott. I'm an architect with Balanspina Architects in Syracuse, and I am the co-chair of the American Institute of Architects Central New York Branch Committee on the Environment.
Oh, thanks for being here. Dick Schutzel.
They're not coming home.
Dick, you're muted.
Thank you for that. Hi, everybody. Dick Schutzo, just a community tree lover, and I work with Steve Harris and Cornell Cropper Extension with the community tree program.
Thanks for being here. Greg Michael.
Greg Michael, Onondaga Earth Corps. Happy to be here.
Thanks, Greg. And I think, let's see, I see Joe and Alex from SMTC. You want to?
Hi, everyone. My name is Joey DiStefano. I'm joined by Alex McRoberts, and we're from the Syracuse Metropolitan Transportation Council.
Thank you. I don't know if we had Jim R. Who's Jim R?
That's me. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hello. I'm Jim Riley, former journalist for the newspapers here. I live in the university area, and I've worked with CCE and the tree stewards and the tree planting for a number of seasons. So just interested in urban forestry in general.
Great. Thanks for being here. And then John Fellman. I guess we'll skip John. Joy. And I don't hear Joy. You might be muted, Joy. And we'll keep going here. Leanna.
Oh, okay. Do you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Cornell Cooperative Extension Tree Steward and Master Naturalist volunteer.
Thank you. And we have a couple more people from CCE. Leanna.
Hi, Leanna Nugent with Cornell Cooperative Extension Onondaga. I'm the community forestry educator, and I oversee the community tree stewards.
Thanks for joining in with us today. And Marilyn?
Just an active citizen interested in preserving the assets of mature trees in the city of Syracuse.
Well, great. And then, let's see, I think we heard from Marjorie, I think. And Ron?
Hey, hi, it's Ron Only. I'm with CCE Tree Stewards and Master Gardener, and I'm interested in planting a bunch of trees.
Great. And Tay?
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Tay Stinson. I work with Onondaga Earth Corps, and I actually happen to be on the team that conducted most of the outreach for the UFMP a couple of years ago.
Yes, I remember you. And then Yvonne from OEC is here. Yvonne?
Hey everyone, also with Onondaga Earth Corps, here to support Steve, also the Parks Department with their efforts in increasing canopy, urban forests. Really excited to hear more and to see and hear from a lot of familiar faces and voices. So
great, great. Marjorie, did I miss you? I'm not sure. I thought I saw a. All right, so
He's at
we
the
did.
beginning.
Okay, well, all right. So that took a little more time that maybe I expected, but I think it was good to know for our speaker to have some idea of who's in the room with us today. And thank you all for being here. It's one of our, it's an indication of how important this topic is to the community by the number of people that showed up here today.
John,
Just
can I jump in for a second?
yeah, I was going to do that, Diane, but go ahead. In my haste to get Stephen started, I forgot to let you have the floor for a minute.
Yeah, I'll just be brief. Diane Brandley, and I've been with Greening USA from the beginning. I just, since Jeff Anthony is not with us to do the shameless self-promotion, I will simply say this is a nonprofit that's been around since 2004. A number of you are already members, so thank you so much for supporting us over the years. If you are not a member, please consider membership. It's 100% dues go to paying our very small expenses. None of us receives a penny for what we do. If you're interested in becoming more involved, please reach out and contact us. Of course, every organization is struggling for volunteers, and we're no different. So if you're interested in involvement with this group, please reach out and contact us. We'd be happy to have you. Take it away, John.
All right, thanks, Diane. And so I just want to tell you a couple of things about our speaker today, Steve Harris. And when I reviewed his background, available online, I said, well, we have a rock star in our community in the urban forestry field. So I'm really grateful that he is willing to be with us today to share his insights about the current state of the reforestation of the city of Syracuse. He's held that job as the arborist for the city for about the last 12 years. So. Prior to that, he's been an urban forest educator with Cornell Cooperative Extension. He was also involved in a nursery project, a little a business that was in the Ithaca area called RPM Ecosystems. He has extensive education from SUNY ESF, a master's degree in forest resource management. Before that, he studied at Paul Smith's. And before that, he studied at the Ohio State University with a bachelor's in urban geography. And in between pursuing his work in forestry, he did a little side trip to, I think it was Gambia, serving in the Peace Corps, and developed an interest in forestry. So came back to school here in New York State to study forestry. He served several terms as on the New York State Urban Forestry Council board. Perhaps he still is. He had served as vice president, and he's active in the Society of Municipal Arborists. So I guess with that, Steve, you can tell us anything more we need to know about you. But with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks a lot, John. I appreciate the introduction. I recently attended 2 national conferences in urban forestry in Seattle. I went with some people from Onondaga Earth Corps and a colleague from the city and the planning department. And one was for municipal arborists, one was partners in community forestry. I got to present some of what I'm showing here at that conference. Record attendance at both conferences. Was really exciting. And I think part of what drove that attendance is just that, now is the time for trees. That's a phrase by Dan Lamb, president of Arbor Day Foundation. But it's also driven by the fact that there's $1.5 billion in urban forestry from the Inflation Reduction Act, which, like the climate provisions, are just historic in proportions for urban forestry. And the leaders at that conference said to all the people there was over 700 people there from all the different nonprofits and municipal arborists and consultants and planners and just every, the urban forest is complex and it requires a lot of players, and they were all there. And they said to all of us, you got to be, now's the time in your communities to be really bold, to get as many collaborators as you can involved, to have sharp elbows, because it's hard to get trees at the table in the planning world, and to just really just get people as excited about it as you can. And when I was looking at everyone introducing themselves, I was thinking that how the state of urban forestry is really promising in Syracuse, not where it needs to be by a long shot, but definitely go in the right direction. And we'll need everybody that's on the call to impact that change. And I was just thinking how, like, I saw Professor Smartin sign on, and when I walked into the urban forest educator job at Cornell, I walked into a really good natural resource program led by Sheila Myers and Amy Samuels and Paul O'Connor. We had a master plan, really the first of its kind in the nation, that was developed by the Forest Service and ESF through the survey work in Cornell. And, we used that master plan for a good decade, getting grants off that. It laid the foundation for everything we did after. And then there was the Onondaga Creek revitalization, which has influenced what we're doing along phase 2 of the Creek Walk for restoration. The growth of OEC along the way, which probably single-handedly has probably played the biggest role in legitimizing the importance of trees, because it helped political leaders see that trees are about people, and if we invest in people, that's how we can invest in trees. And the county and now the city have been really good at that. The county really went first with Save the Rain, which led to further growth of the OEC. They planted most of the trees in that program. 8,500 trees were planted under Save the Rain, and they did a lot. And that really accelerated the outreach. That was probably, I felt like, where we were really at our peak, working with Cornell and OEC and parks. And what we need to do now has to be bigger than that. So I'm hoping that we can really grow that part of it. That's where we need to do the most. But Save the Rain also elevated urban forestry in general, because of it, trees are part of the gray infrastructure, part of the landscape, and that was very influential. And now we're in a place where we have a very pro-tree mayor and council, and that's really helping us. So that's sort of the start. Now I'll get going to the presentation. And I may lose, I snagged a cold. There are 12 people out in our office with either a cold or a flu. It's a ghost town in here, and it got me. And so if my mind wanders, it's because those viruses have got me. But, I want to give an update on the master plan and what our progress is. There's some promising developments, but big challenges. And, an important focus area for us has been increasing canopy in low tree equity neighborhoods. And, through the work of American Forests and a lot of researchers, we've uncovered that a map of neighborhood tree canopy is analogous to a map of canopy cover. Of income. It's a really tight relationship. Lower income neighborhoods have fewer trees. And it's not just about redlining, but it's how we've been developing land in general for a long time. And how people in those neighborhoods develop a negative attitude toward trees, because we've been historically bad at managing what we do have. Not just street trees, but how natural regeneration grows on unmanaged vacant lots because of just where we're at collectively as a community. And so you can see how the near west side, this is one of the main redlined areas of the city, and then the gentle, nurturing touch of urban renewal led to a lot of demolitions and a lot of lack of investment. But then, when all the programs we also built a lot in this neighborhood. And what's actually promising is 5 years ago, or 10 years ago, canopy near west side was 21%. What we don't know is if that canopy has increased from tree planting or regeneration on unmanaged vacant lots. But so the push to increase canopy and focus on tree equity came out of our urban forest master planning process. And as Tay mentioned, the public input process was led by Onondaga Earth Corps, by the young adults there, and resulted in feedback from 1,500 residents through public meetings and surveys. OEC went citywide to get feedback, reaching deep into our neighborhoods and talking to new Americans. And our consultant, David Resource Group, helped us crystallize all that feedback and put it through the magic funnel and filter to produce these 3 primary goals. Increase canopy 7%. That low number is actually driven by me. I was nervous about a lofty canopy goal and wanted us to at least beat what the national average is, but it's time for us to start thinking bigger than that. But we also have to improve forest health and resiliency through better management and smart species selection, and then create a culture of urban forest stewardship through robust workforce programs, volunteer stewardship, and education programs. So then the pandemic, we released that plan March 5th, 2020. Pandemic hit a few weeks later. We kind of went to hiatus, and especially OEC and parks, we're all just trying to implement our core programs during that time. And so we kind of scaled back, but we resurfaced in April of 2021 and convened 3 stakeholder meetings where we met about vacant lands. We focused on 3 strategies for implementation of the master plan. Vacant lands was one of those, how to get more trees on private property, and then revitalizing education programs and outreach with a focus on schools and volunteers. When it comes to private properties, one of the things we looked at is where's the greatest potential to plant trees, and that's where grass is. Even though just because there's grass there doesn't mean there's something good underground to put a tree into. But if we ended up planting, converting half of the available grass to canopy on all these land use types, we could increase canopy 12%. And so, when we look at like churches have the most grass, so we talked about how that's a great opportunity for, that's a private property outreach opportunity, and how can whoever our partners are involved help us interact with churches. That's just one example. Excuse me. Then a group met to talk about how can we expand education in our schools and with our stewardship programs, schools, non-traditional venues. From our survey work and outreach, we learned that people that want to know how to care for trees are ready to volunteer to help. Believe environmental program needs to be pervasive in our schools and after school programs. And we at Parks, we work with Onondaga Earth Corps on Arbor Day, and when we do that, it shows year after year how impactful tree planting is, especially when OEC members are leading the process. And every time a teacher comes up to us or an aide, someone says, the kid who struggles the most in our classroom was your tree planting leader. Year after year, we hear really impactful stories about the power of doing that. And so we know we got to do more. And this winter, we met with Baltimore Woods and some educators, and we wanted to get together with others to figure out how can we expand this. We talked with funders about it. They were very excited about some of the ideas we had, and we really got to expand our bandwidth so we can do more of that. And that's the place where we need to develop our program the most. It's after Save the Rain ended, there was a big transition with our trifecta of working with Parks, OEC, and CCE. And it's time to reconvene, try and bring that back and bring others into the fold so we can do more. We welcome and support any ideas on that. And we also need to refine and improve our identity and our marketing around it. When I look at what my colleagues are doing, I feel like they're generating more headlines with meaningful activity we're certainly capable of that, and hope to do more of that. Okay, so the mayor was really excited about our master plan when we rolled it out, and then when the American Rescue Plan came along and the city got 126 million from that, from the impacts of COVID, there was a lot that the mayor had to decide to allocate, and so many issues in the city to address. But he allocated $2 million in stimulus funds from ARPA to kick off implementation. And it's mostly on planting, but also we're improving soil conditions to do that and trying to address a backlog of young tree pruning. Onondaga Earth Corps is pruning a lot of trees for us. And at the same time, it was a good budget year for the forestry department in general. And my colleagues say parks departments nationwide. I think everybody realized how vital green spaces are when you either got to be huddled up in your house or outdoors. And we got a nice boost in facilities planning money and in staffing as a result. And we got money. We have some capital budgets now to partner with our TBW and engineering, so we can make sure that new streetscapes are tree friendly. So this is a good start for us. We're doing some rotational pruning, and but also excited about natural areas restoration, being able to fight the fight with invasives and remove and control, then replant. And I'll give some examples of those. So here's some other money that the city department's got. We got $2 million to upgrade facilities, and maybe if you've been part of the process, you've met some of our facilities planners, Josh Wilcox, Brian Massey, and Alexa Geller. We've been going around the neighborhoods seeking public input on what neighborhoods would like to see in terms of parks improvements. You may know that we have dedicated a lot of money so we can take over a municipal sidewalk program. Neighborhood and business development got a really big boost to increase affordable housing, which will become even more important now than ever with Micron looming in the background. And then, of course, improving our water infrastructure, especially a regular process of replacing lead services in our mains. And of course, all this is happening in that backdrop of dealing with the concentrated poverty we have in our community, and how we're trying to address that. And trees can be a part of all that, whether it's rebuilding some of the oldest public housing in the nation, or converting the highway to a green corridor, just making job training part of it, revitalizing our business districts, which we're looking some opportunities in South Ave. The city is. There's just a lot of great things where trees can be integrated into revitalization efforts. But then we do have some challenges. So this is Butternut Street, where they rebuilt the road, they replaced the curbs, they replaced water services, they replaced the sidewalk and catch basins. And we talked about we had a meeting about tree protection here, where everyone thought it was possible until we started digging, and we realized that was a humorous idea because of the amount of excavation that has to go on for all those things. And so instead, what we were able to accept that we were going to lose a lot of trees. This is the photo on the left, but we were able to build the sidewalks in a way so that trees could coexist with them by creating some tunnels underneath the sidewalks using structural soils, a stone with gaps. Roots can grow in the sidewalk without heaving. So we were able to adapt on the fly. And then, we have a lot of streets where, like you see in the picture on the right, where there's just no room for trees here. These trees were not designed with trees in mind. These streets were not designed with trees in mind. And canopy loss continues. I sent a link, a document to John, who I think he shared with people, looking at our urban tree canopy assessment that we had done through a company called Planet Geo. They looked at the land use flyovers and were able to trace change between 2013 and 2019. And if you look at some of these, like, I don't know if you can, does my, yeah, if where the brown is where there are losses, and these losses can be traced to some kind of development. In Elmwood, it was there's a Garzones, which was a big lot that we had some stormwater capture issues, or the county did. So they built some large rain gardens. They deforested a lot to do that. Some quality trees, some low quality trees. The Aspen apartments on Brighton and Thurber, that resulted in a lot of canopy loss behind the word outer and outer Comstock. I don't think Xavier Woods was on this, but that was a primary headwaters forest that resulted in some canopy loss. In Southwest neighborhood, with the Creek Walk Phase 2, great project, but we removed a lot of trees for it. We've planted a lot since then. Land use is going to continue to change, and with Micron out there, until we change our ordinance, we're going to be losing more trees than we plant. We're going to be chasing our tail. And this is a great example of it. Proposed student apartments. The footprint occupies most of it. What are the mechanisms in a new tree ordinance we can do to help make sure that if we can't get trees on site, can there be mitigation funds, a check written that allows us to do reforestation elsewhere? If our community doesn't have the will to do this collectively, then we're just going to continue to lose trees. And so that is something we'll have to address and work through. Just to get us calibrated, we're currently at about 28% canopy. This will change depending on how the assessment is done. This was using the National Agriculture, the NAIP, N-A-I-P, which I can't remember what it stands for. I'll move on. But that we have about 1.5 million trees on all lands, and that coverage has been relatively stable since the 80s. But we've been losing. What's been happening is, while we've been losing higher quality trees, we've been growing lower quality forests. We know this because of the permanent plots that the Forest Service was remeasuring every 5 years from 99 to 2019, actually. We benefited greatly from having the Northeast Research Station being here, and Dave Nowak was running it at the time until he retired, and was covering these re-inventories on their dime. He did 2019 with the promise that we would do it in 2024. And this has been very valuable at helping it. You can't manage what you don't measure. And this has helped us know that buckthorn is our #1 tree now. Tree of Heaven has grown quite a bit too. And, stable canopy cover, but double the trees. And, one impact of redlining that is felt today is all the housing demos since the 80s to now. And much of the urban forest that remains in those areas are backyard trees, plus all the colonizing invasives. And these forests are mostly box elder, Norway maple, silver maple, black locust, tree of heaven. Their structure is often very poor and hazardous, not resilient, not robust. Many of these trees would not be around if they were street trees, and they exist on thousands of acres of vacant land and natural areas. And this leads to a distinctly different canopy from that of our wealthy neighborhoods. If you compare Sedgwick neighborhood to Brighton, one's wealthy, one's poor. They have similar canopy. Brighton actually has more canopy, but Sedgwick has nearly double the street trees than Brighton, while Brighton's canopy is mostly on property interiors, away from structures, and in much larger patches. So on the surface, those patches, large patches, seem good. But what's in those large patches is what matters. And often they have smaller trees, more in decline, lower quality. And where they're on vacant lands, they're further away from houses and streets. they're not shading them, and they're providing fewer ecosystem services. And a lot of these small patches become sites of illegal dumping. That's a public health problem and generates a negative attitude toward trees. And when they become sites of gun violence, we're asked to remove the trees so that we have better sight lines. City Hall and the police understand that we won't remove healthy trees, but we recently cleared this lot right by the creek walk, and they're mostly pretty poor quality trees, years and years of trash. And the reality in our red line neighborhoods is that a lot of the urban forest needs to rebuild just as much as our housing stock. So, you know, there's a lot of interventions. Some are quick and simple and just something we can do every year. Others are more complicated and take time to develop. But I'll focus on the interventions primarily in the public land area, focusing on the coordination we have with other departments, including sidewalk and streetscape projects, and with neighborhood and business development on neighborhood revitalization. That's a new program that we're pretty excited about. But, you know, increasing canopy in business districts is a great place to start. Most of them are in low canopy neighborhoods and have no space for trees. And rebuilding these streetscapes can be pricey, but is very impactful. We know that tree-lined streets mean better business. People hang out longer. They spend more money, higher returns for in terms of rent and business. This is North Salina that went through a streetscape improvement in the aughts, I think 2009, but sometime then. And then no space for trees. Fortunately, the county wanted to get more capture in this CSO, so they rebuilt this streetscape, and they used a combination of structural soils and silvicells, which provided a lot of space underground for trees. So there's basically rooting volume almost to the fronts of the buildings here. A lot of cubic feet of rooting volume for the trees. And some trees are doing really well. Others need replaced because they get hit by cars or may have vandalized, but really a great project that the county did. And more of that will really be great for our business districts. And then, you know, our city engineers and street structures managers at DPW, they prefer a little more simpler approach to streetscapes than the county did. You know, one of the big things we've been focusing on is the sidewalk planners and the sidewalk engineer have been doing whole blocks. They looked at all our sidewalks. They prioritized what are like high pedestrian corridors, sidewalks in poor condition. They did like 6 whole blocks both sides from 1 to 6 blocks long. And we went to those places and we looked at where's the future tree going to go. And while all the utilities were marked, we would go and mark the best spot for the tree. And that symbol we wrote was an indication of where to dig this pit that my colleague Kim is standing in. And there we would put structural soils in there to a 2 or 3 foot depth, put the tree in the center of that trench so that the roots could grow. When they hit that stone, they won't deflect. They'll go through the pores and under the sidewalk. We hope it eliminates heaving. We hope it at least significantly delays. That's what we think is going to happen. And it works in our downtown settings, so we expect it to work here. We think it'll just help kind of stop the insanity of they can repair any sidewalk they want, and I can plant a tree anywhere I want. We thought let's put an end to that and try and coordinate this. We did 113 trees this way this year. I'm not sure how many sidewalk miles that was. But another thing that our transportation planner, Neil Milcarrick Burke, is doing, a favorite of mine, I think everybody loves this, is hunting down parts of our right-of-way where there's asphalt, reclaiming our right-of-way, taking out the asphalt. Here we dug a 40-foot long, 8-foot wide, 3-foot deep trench, filled it with soil, put trees in. The trees hadn't been planted yet, so I had to put fake trees in, but they are now in the ground. This will go, we did this on Water Street 2 at an upstate, at a building that Upstate uses for medical storage. And it's right by Ormond Spencer Park at University and Water. That one was a little harder. The gas main was right under the sidewalk, so we just dug a long trench, filled it with soil, and planted it with trees. Our work with neighborhood and business development has got a lot of interest and attention because, you know, they oversee vacant land and housing strategy. It's a great team over there, and they came to us after we rolled out our master plan and said, we see the vision and has some ideas. And so that was probably the first time in my 12 years working in the city that, you know, another department came to me like that. And that was exciting to have happen. And, you know, affordable housing is being done under the moniker of Resurgent Neighborhood Initiative, which is a signature program of the mayor's to combat poverty and reknit the fabric of our neighborhoods. And the goal is to build concentrations of housing where it'll have the most impact, and based on current conditions of existing housing and proximity to past investments and community assets and the suitability of vacant lots for building. And one of the challenges they were having was we started realizing when we started talking together is that they're leaving hazardous trees on site, which would then become an expensive problem for a new homeowner. Or as shown in the picture on the right, contractors, you know, we wouldn't identify the high value quality trees, and then we wouldn't have a tree protection plan for them, and contractors would drive heavy equipment and change the soil all around those. And so, you know, our division wasn't part of that permitting process. And so our departments really didn't know about each other until the master planning process. You know, I didn't appreciate how influential it would be just having other departments involved in the master planning process, people that really awaken them to how we can plan better. So now we're just starting to, we, the forestry division, are starting to inspect those sites. We can help find and remove problem trees, define tree protection requirements for contractors, and MBD has a willingness to write into the contract those tree protection requirements. Once we close the deal on how to do that this year, I think that'll be very impactful. We're also starting to look at the site plans for where they're proposing the housing footprints. That's the picture on the right. And thinking about where we can get trees in before the ownership, before they're occupied, ahead of occupancy. We are asking ourselves, do we plant trees ahead of occupancy, or do we instead develop an education program for new homeowners to get them to adopt trees? When I asked that question at the Partners in Community Forestry, they said you should not plant trees ahead of time. I don't know what to think about that. I mean, probably a wise move. The thing I always think about trees is if they are actually infrastructure that's integral. You know, we would never not think of building water, sewer, or electric connections to a house. Trees are a critical part of that, but there is a community element to where you need to give people a say. So we will definitely develop that over time. We're also developing a process. MBD is helping, kind of taking the lead, helping us figure out, by MBD, I mean neighborhood and business development, if I haven't said that already, identifying what vacant lots in residential areas can become permanent urban forest. And this is an intervention that would be an easy to maintain landscape of grass and trees that ensures visibility, but also creates shade. And this is an approach modeled after the excellent Philadelphia Land Care Program, which is funded by, the Philadelphia Horticulture Society funds that through their flower show. I don't know what exists like the flower show east of the Mississippi. It generates a lot of money, and you know, what we see it is a pathway to make sure that we can establish an urban forest where you can see 3 trees from your home. You live in a neighborhood with at least 30% canopy, and are at least 300 feet from nearby green space, safe, accessible, and functional. So we're looking at how we might deploy this so that we have a mosaic of urban forests at the block level, and so we can project how many trees this will require. We've made a request in our CIP for next year so we can start this process. That's capital improvement program. We already spend, these vacant lots, even the ones we don't own, we may not own them, but we sure inherit the cost of managing them. And we spend a lot of time mowing lots we don't own, let alone lots we do. We spend a lot of time cleaning up them, and we spend a lot of time losing the money from the pernicious nature of what it means to have blight in your neighborhood. So this winter, planners were considering various sites to test this approach, and it overlapped with a site that youth involved in a placemaking program wanted to fix. The Center for Court Innovation runs a program out of the Peacemaking Center, which is on the 600 block of Oswego, I think. Anyway, the corner of Oswego and Tully. And the youth there identified this lot right across from Blodgett School, where they go to school, as just a problem. It's site of a frequent illegal dumping. It's in a neighborhood with one of the lowest tree equity scores in the city. They really wanted that to become an asset for them rather than just a place that no one wants any part of. So this became our pilot, and my colleague Kim, she engaged the youth this summer to develop a community design process and educated them on the benefits of trees. And we will plant the 20 trees in their design this coming spring with the youth. They also proposed charging stations. I don't know if we'll pull that off, but we hope this will be a community planting at the end of April. This slide shows a bunch of interventions that have happened and we think are going to happen in the southwest neighborhood. The long blue represents South Ave Business District. The price right is kind of right in the center of the screen. It's still represented here as a bunch of vacant lots, but South Ave's Business District is part of a proposal called Downtown Revitalization Initiative, which we're told is awarded to us, but we don't know which projects will be funded. But when stakeholders in the neighborhood voted on things they wanted, tree-lined streets was one of the things that people wanted. And so that was neat to hear. And so if we can rebuild this business district that way, because there's currently no room for trees, in combination with the other investments that might happen there, that could be impactful. And then if you look at the red, that is where a bunch of tax delinquent forested vacant lots that are full of trash currently exist. I showed a picture of them, and we would like to deploy the example I just gave you in this area, where some would be permanent urban forest, maybe some of it would be interim treatment, to support the reinvestments along that corridor, especially since that's right next to a brand new beautiful creek walk phase 2. We've had a lot of great planting and community involvement, and kids are biking, everyone's using that, and that was built on 30 vacant lots as well. And I don't know, this kind of happened by happenstance, this concentration of activities, but I'm sure there'll be some interest. Probably stakeholders within the city will want more commercial development on some of these lands in red. They are in the floodplain, so we can't build HUD housing on floodplain lands, but a private developer could develop on these. So whatever happens here, our message will be green is your pathway. Pick your green, establish your green areas, build around them. Trees mean business. And by that, I mean in terms of dollars. So let's make sure that green's part of that redevelopment. And, before we do anything on those 20 lots, neighborhood and business development will help us conduct some outreach, and we can work through what that might look like. But another layer of that is this Southwest hub is the Syracuse Urban Food Forest Project, which is a partnership between SUNY ESF and the Food Studies program at Syracuse University. Involves Onondaga Earth Corps and Syracuse Grows of Jubilee Homes. And they have been engaging residents to get kids out of the classroom to plant native and edible trees and shrubs along our green spaces. They did a big planting along the Creek Walk phase 3, phase 2, a lot along here. And then, but in the spring at Elmwood, they planted 150 trees and shrubs in Elmwood Park. And even before that, we planted ramps in Elmwood Park, just a small group of people, and those were successful regenerating. I think this is just a really great project, and I look forward to them doing more. It's going to help us connect our neighborhoods and green spaces using vacant lots. So we're going to rehab some of those vacant lots and replant on them to create kind of a green necklace all the way up to Springdale, or up to Wadsworth. So then another area that we focus on and hope to do more, well, we know we're going to do more, especially at Schiller, and that is to recognize the forests we have are significant components of our urban forests. Forests capture the most carbon. They're the highest value tree. And where we have these forests, we have cooler neighborhoods and higher air quality, where they've been neglected for 2 decades, and that's why buckthorn has taken over. And if you look at this picture, if you look at the left and the right, that's just a solid wall of buckthorn. And here Onondaga Earth Corps removed this 3/4 of an acre patch. We've since planted that. We've since removed all the buckthorn on this slope, treated it one time with herbicides, and then replanted this fall. We replanted 500 herbaceous plants and shrubs, including 186 trees. And, this is often, especially on the north side, Schiller is surrounded by new Americans. This is often their first exposure to nature in the city. And we just have to do a better job making this both a healthy forest, which is characterized by complexity and layers, but also one that people want to be in and feel safe in. So we are going to do, this is about 10 acres of forest at Schiller, and we got Dormitory Authority of the State of New York funding through Magnorelli's office, $250,000 to restore this whole forest. And we have to provide some match, and we're going to start 2023 will be a big year for this. So be ready to plant a lot of trees in 2023 in the forest of Schiller Park, so we can grow a new one there. I mean, the issue here when we cleared this was after we removed the buckthorn, it was bare earth and no other regeneration. So it was 150-year-old white oaks. That's Don Leopold's estimate, and buckthorn, not a complex forest. And so if you go visit it now, you'll see we got a lot of different things in the ground there. I said this before, I've been involved in urban forestry in the city since 2001. And for a long time, it was hard for people to put their mind around, the benefits of trees, considering all the other challenges our city was going through. And that's changed over time. And I really think the work of Onondaga Earth Corps has been a catalyst to that, because over the years, as they do more and more and become like an expected presence in our community, people who work in city government, including elected officials, start having kids going through that program, or have been involved, or got a tree from it, or know a cousin who, or a niece or nephew that went through the program. As they learn more about it and see them in their high vis vests doing the work they do, and see that a significant amount of the dollars we use for this infrastructure are to support them to plant trees in the communities they come from. It just helps see the circle of benefit that comes from that. And I feel like now people expect that. And if we can keep the community involved this way through the way that Earth Core looks like and represents the community and informs what we do, I think that'll just really help trees have a permanent place at the planning table in the city. There's one I want to talk about because this speaks to our natural areas management. This is something we haven't pursued yet, but my colleagues around the nation are pursuing this strategically to great effect. And that is the city forest credits and carbon markets. This is a voluntary market that was developed by American Forest for the very purpose we've been talking about. The idea is to engage large corporations with corporate and social responsibility goals, especially those that are staking a claim to neutralize their carbon footprint, to put their money where their mouth is and get involved. And they're doing it on two fronts. For one, they are granting money to municipalities and nonprofits to implement these programs. And then they're buying the carbon credits from them too. I don't know what the returns are right now, but at the time, 2 years ago, they were selling at $20 to $40 a ton. And the idea of these is not that this is just, right now it's probably used as a way to right away wanton destruction and carbon belching elsewhere. But the idea is that it's a tool to help us rebuild our urban forests while other mechanisms help us reduce our carbon footprint. The idea is that minimum project sizes of 1,000 trees or more with a 25-year commitment. But it can also include preservation of forests that are slated for development. That's something I'm especially concerned with. There are plenty of patches of woods that I can see from my window right now that are low quality urban forests. If a developer were to develop there, my focus would be on how do we make sure we get as much canopy on site? And if we can't, how can we make sure we get that lost canopy elsewhere at some sort of ratio? But there are some forests that, especially if they have a significant component of native trees and regeneration, it's really important that we know where those are and that we provide opportunities to get them under protection in this program as a way to do that. That requires a longer commitment. But here's an example that shows that credits are released in 4 periods at year 1, 3, 5, and 26, and 80% of the carbon credits are released for sale in the first 5 years. And if we went through the high and low returns per ton, you can generate some dollars that will go back into maintenance. And the larger the scale, the more you could do. So for us, we have all these forested drumlins with nice overstory trees and no replacement forests. But we have plenty of invasive buckthorn. This is where I'd love to go to larger corporations that are interested in their carbon footprint, helping us do what we're doing at Schiller Park and involving the community along the way. And then, of course, 81. Here's the current and the potential. hopefully we'll get to this. Maybe not everyone on this call agrees that the community grid is the way to go. But one thing's for sure, the footprint of a highway, especially a taller, wider one, is going to create a lot of heat island. And we know that the impacts on air quality and airway problems has been on our community. So the concepts propose a lot of trees, and we just have to make sure the design that happens provides space underground for the roots so the trees can reach the potential that the concepts propose. And you know, we've been able to, we the city got to respond to the DEIS, and one of the things that, and that's what I focused it on, was the biological needs of a tree to grow big mean roots underground. So anywhere you show a tree between a sidewalk and a road, where are those roots going to go? Because what you're providing is not enough. They got to be able to go under the sidewalk or make it over their way to other land under the sidewalk. It will be interesting to see how that plays out. But then right next to it, of course, is rebuilding of the housing authority properties. I know that Blueprint 15 is leading the charge to make sure the interests and vision of residents are carried forward. And this is a concept I saw from Blueprint 15 that shows a lot of really nice tree-lined streets in a new park, which they've been talking with us at the Parks Department about. But when I look at what those housing developments have now compared to what is proposed, the canopy is better now. Fred Murphy, who has worked at Housing Authority in the 70s, he was dialed into trees then. He was planting trees then, and that canopy, they have good canopy, 24 and 31%. And you can see all around that are a bunch of heat islands, really low canopy coverage. And that's common downtown. But certainly when we're building new parking lots, that's an opportunity to reduce the temperatures can be 10, 20 degrees hotter during those big heat waves. And we know heat waves kill, and they bake pollution and make it worse. And so, you know, I hope that we find a way to make sure that this new development has at least the canopy cover that is there now, if not what my neighborhood has, which is 38%. That's something that I've been in conversations with leaders about, and I'm not sure what way that'll go, but hopefully we can do something to impact change on that so that we have better canopy on the interiors of properties.
Steve, I'm going to break in here and just to say there are some questions in the chat that people have raised already, and so why don't we? I mean, if you've got one or
my last slide.
Your last slide, okay, finish that up, and then we'll take some of those questions.
Okay, well, it's just to close by saying that Micron creates an unprecedented opportunity and threat. When I saw the slide in the Syracuse.com about the future housing needs and saw that in the city, it'll be a massive amount of housing needs and all the ancillary development that'll result from increased economic activity, I thought we have 18 months to get a new tree ordinance or we're in trouble. And I'm even equally as worried for what's going to happen in the county, because when we design, in general, we design through trees. We don't design with trees as an asset that we build around, like the conservation design for subdivisions in the Hudson Valley. Hopefully that will come to the fore as we develop planning. But it is not a controversial thing to say that all this economic activity is going to result in a lot of forest loss to our detriment. Maybe that part is considered controversial, but hopefully we're up to the challenge and we're going to start right away in the city to modernize our ordinance. Thanks so much for your time.
Thanks very much for your time and a very comprehensive presentation. And I want to say, congratulations on all the successes that you have brought to the city's tree program, and that we're kind of managing it as a public utility. So, my hat off to you. And maybe we should, unmute and give you a round of applause. But for not only your presentation today, but the work that you've done. Um, yeah. Um, um, there are some questions, in the chat. Uh, and while we've had, like you point out, we have challenges ahead, and we'll look forward to working with you to help bring those, achieve some successes over those challenges. There was one question that's taken us all the way back to the Labor Day storm. Is what kind of recovery has occurred from that event? Has that been assessed?
Has it assessed, have we recovered from the Labor Day storm?
Yeah.
I would say we haven't. I would say we have been good at planting trees in high priority areas, but that we're still losing more trees than we plant, as evidenced by that slide I showed, the monitoring change on 10-acre hexagonals. I would say we're probably getting better at integrating planting, so in the long term we'll start gaining ground. But I mean, like many other cities, we're still losing more trees than we plant. We're still losing
Yeah.
canopy.
Yeah. So what is a good tree? Marjorie asked, what are the good trees?
That's an existential question. I mean, we are always trying to plant a tree that'll grow as large as possible, because those are the ones that live the longest and provide the most benefits. Then it's a matter of what tree is most adapted to the given site conditions. And there's just so many trees that do that, that could be planted, I mean. So, I mean, we try and plant a diverse urban forest. We're trying to get better at taking advantage of uniformity, to balance diversity with uniformity, but there is no one good tree, nor should there ever be. My favorite tree currently is chinkapin oak. I'll leave it at that.
Great. Now, and Carol asked what the acronym SUFFP stood for, and use those associated with the boundary. I don't know if that was on one of your slides.
Syracuse Urban Food Forest Project.
Okay. Now, and can the city get money from developers who are taking down trees? I think you addressed that sort of, about the challenge that we're facing out there, and maybe a couple different ways to get money. I don't know if you need to say anything more about that, but I think this, this idea of having a urban forest ordinance put into place that will affect development seems to be the big hurdle that's facing us, correct?
The question is, can they be planted on homeowners? Can poor homeowners get trees on their lands from this?
That is a program that we want to really ramp up in 2023, and that requires good partnership with others. We did a tree giveaway this fall with Onondaga Earth Corps at the home headquarters Block Blitz, and then at the Onondaga Creek Mile Marketplace in October. And we would like to really do more of that. I think that's going to be one of the most important ways we get trees onto private property, is make trees available, come up with a way to educate people about where trees could be planted, involve all the right, teach people how to maintain their tree. I mean, for the first many years, hand tools can take care of that. And then, of course, we'd want to track those trees. So that's where
Yeah.
education comes into play, or maybe provide a way where somebody like Onondaga Earth Corps or a private contractor could come prune the tree if somebody's in a position to do so.
Yeah. Well, Steve, kind of a related question is the next one in there. And I've noticed that in my neighborhood where, I think in the last couple of years, there have been at least 3 trees that I've noticed it got removed by the property owners. As a matter of fact, I have a weed tree in my backyard that I'm thinking of that it needs to go because it looks to be a little unsafe. But so what is the current status of prohibiting a landlord from removing a tree? Is a permit required for a property owner to take down a tree in the city these days?
No, we don't regulate tree removal. We don't have we're not even close to having the number of people we would need to be able to enforce that. I'm not sure. I'm nervous about doing that. It's not that we shouldn't do it, but I do know that my colleagues in cities that do regulate tree removal on private property, it's their least favorite part of the job. Maybe it's an important part, but the way we do play a role on private property is when we see trees that do need to be removed because they're public health, public safety threat. That's currently how far we take that.
Does the staff of the Parks Department, are they available to private homeowners, property owners to come out and give advice about a particular tree that they might be concerned about?
No, we don't do that because we just, it's challenging enough to oversee the trees we are responsible for. We encourage people to reach out to a certified arborist and tree care companies. I mean, maybe people are nervous about doing that. Sometimes they may feel that they're not getting the people may question the advice they get for a tree care company, but that's a qualified professional is the way to go with that. And I define that by arborist certification.
Great. So Carol talks about, although I did, Greg put a comment in here about anyone wanting to become involved on the implementation team. Greg, do you want to reinforce what you're getting at there?
Yeah, so I think Steve had one more slide, and it's just a shout out to, I think there are a lot of people that are in this go-to meeting that would be interested in supporting the implementation of the plan in various ways. There is an implementation team. There are 3 subgroups that are working in that. And yeah, if you're interested in being involved as a volunteer in the implementation, I suggest shooting Steve an email. We're likely to pick up meetings in the new year. We have groups that are focused on kind of the education and outreach component, trees on private properties, and the third being tree equity. So there's a bunch of folks that are involved already, but just casting the net a little bit more broadly. If you're interested in that, let Steve know.
Greg, is that like an advisory committee or something along those lines?
Yeah, so each of the subgroups is coming up with their own plan to move the plan forward, so to speak. We have lots of plans that sit on shelves, so we're looking for people who will advise and also help implement around it. So some of it is, professionals that are involved in the field and have the time to look at grant opportunities, and some of it is more advisory.
Great. Thank you for that.
I'll add that that's something we need to bring back this year. We need to get in a place where we can make applications to funders so that we can have more people helping us do stuff. That is a really important part of it. We need more collaborators, active collaborators, helping us to do this. And then the other is that, you know, our ordinance currently speaks about a shade tree advisory committee. I've never known one to be in place. And some people have said to me, why, you know, you should use that to your advantage to help further with the things you're trying to do.
Yeah. Thanks for that. I think that would be a good thing to get cranked up if you could. So there's a little discussion in the chat about the good tree criteria again. And Carol, I think Marjorie pointed out that homeowners generally pick fruit trees, and Carol points out that one of the criteria should be that, you know, we should be looking at native species. Do you want to talk a little bit about native species, Steve?
Sure. We currently are planting about, if for every 100 trees we plant, about 60 to 62% are native. And of that, probably half are a cultivar, meaning they're a genetic clone that is reproduced because of that characteristic. And the cultivars, you know, for us, it's driven in part by availability, but we also, you know, making sure we don't plant native for native's sake, except that we think it is important that dominates our forest. And we certainly don't plant invasives. And we're trying to, when I do design reviews, I try and get them out of landscape designs. A calorie pear is still a popular tree, and we do not want to plant any more of that because it's starting to colonize. I get a lot of pressure to plant that. So we definitely pay attention to that. And as we get better at improving site conditions for trees, especially along the roadway, then that will help us be able to plant a wider range of native trees. But that would definitely be a component of an ordinance to make sure at least we're not putting more invasives in the landscape.
Right. Yeah, there was a question about ordinances, and you know, in terms of what are some good examples. Do you have some that you could share with us, either now or after the after the meeting? You know, we could email.
You know, we are drilling into that right now. There's a recent workshop on decoding municipal ordinances, and at that, some of the leading edge cities in terms of tree protection were presenting. Austin is one example. And we are trying to sort through that ourselves right now. And the planning, neighborhood and business development planners are helping us with that. Northern Virginia has some good tree ordinances, in the Chesapeake Bay region in general. The state of Maryland has some reforestation laws that are impactful, and probably the most scrutinized urban forest in the nation is Washington, D.C.
All right. So Marjorie asked about the expense of homeowners maintaining trees, and I know the Onondaga Earth Corps, I think, does provide some assistance or does some work to maintain trees. You want to talk about like what can a homeowner do that needs to that might not be able to afford to maintain their trees? Are there assistance available to them here in Syracuse?
So yeah, just to clarify, when I said, for all the public trees, we manage trees in the right of way, and that's a service provided to property owners. When I mentioned Onondaga Earth Corps, that was as a potential for if we have a private tree giveaway program, that maybe as part of the funding mechanism for that, it could include young tree maintenance, both in terms of education or a service for those that can't do it themselves. But for big trees, I don't know what the solution to that is yet. But the way I think about the big trees on private property is I think of them as providing a collective public benefit. I see them as a public utility, even though on private property. So maybe we will, as a nation, get to a place where we're thinking of it that way, and that would lead to a pathway where we could be managing those trees. But right now, the one way that I know property owners that don't have the money for it, they're going to home headquarters, which has an emergency fund for housing issues, and tree removals have been paid for through that.
Oh, interesting.
So
And
John, Bob
But you
Haley
have to
has his
income
hand
qualify.
raised. Bob Haley has his hand raised.
okay, yeah, there was one other thing, and maybe we can get to it, is what, whether or not it might include a registry for landmark trees, or not in the chat. So yeah, we have a few minutes left. Actually, we're almost out of that time, but Bob, if you want to go take the floor for a second.
Thank you all. First of all, just thank you, Steve. And I think, Steve, you have to be encouraged, excuse me, by this audience, for one, ESF, our history. We've got 30 years of, my personal involvement goes at least 30 years with so many of these roots groups, if we can call them that. There are so many champions to this subject that it just says continue on the path we're on, which is networking, as Greg and others have said. Use the combined strength that we have individually now. So again, Greening USA is a champion. Your presentation you just did here should go, in my view, to the Onondaga Planning Federation next spring. And I know you participated that in the past, but these are the kinds of overall planning goals. And especially when you say you are surprised by our different departments being more successful the more they work together. We have, silos. We've talked about this forever, of our education in our past. And now we're into the view of looking way back at synthesis as fundamental to sustainability. So thank you for your presentation. I think we do need standard tree details for the DOT project. Here's an area that many of these different groups could support Steve in negotiating, because right now the city is negotiating in a the best sense that we can for standard details to Steve's goals in the long run. The DOT is not inclined to do this. We have to push them. If we could, as a group, and when I say a group, everybody on this network should sign Steve's letters to go then say to the DOT, no, these are the standard route details we want the DOT to use in their project. This can still be done. This is the detail phase of the urban portion of the I-81 project. I also want to say, in terms of our neighborhoods of equity, in SHA, again, maintain those tree canopy issues, one of the greatest resources. And thanks for the compliment to Fred Murphy and the quality of the tree canopies in Pioneer Homes. We tried to get that protected as a historic property. SHA's leadership chose not to go that route. We actually had extra historic funding of 20% of the project on top of the federal monies that could have been used. They chose not to retain anything, either the buildings, which could have been redone for SHA's future, and the quality of place that the residents are asking for, because they've already lost the 15th Ward with their grandparents' generation, and now they're going to lose the 15th Ward quality places, which include the tree canopies in the new building. Along with that, I mean, there's so many good things here, group. I just say strength to everybody. The standard details, you've got it, Steve. Low-income neighborhoods, that's what I was trying to say. In our neighborhoods, we need to stress that this is environmental systemic planning that can be reversed. And it's not about that we don't need trees in certain neighborhoods, as we all know. It's about the canopy and the health of everyone. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Bob.
Thanks, Bob. Steve, if you would like to, we probably should close up the meeting. Is there anything else you want to share, either about Bob's comments or anything else before we close?
I want to say that I will do everything I can working with OEC and others to really take advantage of all your comments and ideas, because it is a classic. It sounds cliche to say, but it does take a village for something like this. Trees are a unique infrastructure, and our intent is to reinvigorate our planning process for the public outreach part, the community forestry part, and we'll invite you guys to that. You know, the challenge has been that with all this, when there's more money, there's more projects, and so it's just made it so hard to find the time to advance the future, which takes consistent touches every day to get where you want to be long term. So we really are going to have to hunker down and with intent of creating some programs that we think funders will support. And as we develop those, we'll want to involve you in that process. And in terms of ordinance, there's some of you, based on your comments, that I'll be reaching out to as we try and figure out how to advance that as fast as possible, because I'm told that the land development pressure is going to be insane now. But that just means we can stop thinking from a scarcity mentality, and we can start being more aggressive in what we think needs to happen with the landscape.
Yeah, well, yeah, thanks again, Steve, for your presentation. And if we can help, please reach out to us, and we will do what we can. And hope to see you soon and talk to you more about this. Thanks, everyone, for being here today. Have a great weekend and holiday season. We hope to see you in January.
Yeah.